So what we thought we'd do is shift gears a little bit. We've heard a lot of really exciting talks so far about sort of the research dimension to biological data science and the future of computational biology. But we did want to pay attention to sort of the education and training components of this as well. This is very important, especially at a world-class university like Carnegie Mellon and also our home universities. So we had a lot of internal discussions about how to make this sort of most productive and useful. So what we decided on was to have a panel. So we have 3 panelists today that are going to sort of talk about their own experiences, but we want this to be highly interactive. We sent them a day ago or so some talking points, some questions just to get things going. But if the conversations moves in a different direction, that's totally okay. Really this is a forum to sort of talk about some of the big challenges that I know that we're all facing. Computer science as a whole, and then also computer science as it relates to biology is exploding very rapidly. So we want to be able to speak to everyone in this community, from high school to postdocs, from people that have been programming since they were 2 years old to people that are just getting started. So I think there's a lot of important topics to discuss. So let me first briefly introduce our panelists, and then we'll sort of jump in here. So our first panelist is Christina, is it Boucher?
Boucher.
Boucher, sorry. Yeah. Boucher. She's an assistant professor of computer and information science and engineering at the University of Florida. Her research lab has done quite a lot of novel methods development and developed a lot of curated databases for the benefits of researchers in bioinformatics and life sciences. Worked on the theoretical underpinnings and sort of practical issues related to genome assembly, metagenomics analysis, resistome surveillance, things like this. Notably, she uses a lot of discrete algorithms and data structures, and we'll be speaking tomorrow morning at, I think, 11:15, talking about sort of the state of the art in the BWT, wavelet trees, and related sequence indices. Our second panelist is Ben Langmead. He's an assistant professor of computer science at Johns Hopkins University. Relevant to this panel, he's also done quite a lot of work on Coursera. That's something I'm very interested to hear more about. He's well known for read alignment, especially DNA and RNA sequencing reads. Also done quite a lot of sort of research and pipelines for reproducible analysis at scale using large-scale cloud computing, advanced multi-core hardware. Moving into sort of pan-genome analysis, graph genome analysis. He's speaking tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And then our last panelist is Erica Motion. Not even attempting that. Assistant professor of mathematics at Carlow University. Also a senior research scientist just across the street here at University of Pittsburgh. Done quite a lot of work on the dynamic modeling of large data sets, especially host response dynamics, using differential equations, data-driven statistics, rule-based models, a lot of things I don't really understand too well, so sign me up for your courses. Has done a lot of great studies sort of at the interactions between the immune system and different pathogens, I think mostly flu and some of these bacterial pneumonias. And I really like the work I've just sort of recently learned about you. It's this really beautiful combination of experimental techniques and mathematical modeling to derive new insights. So these are our panelists today. So just to kind of kick it off, I've tried to give the highlights, but maybe in a couple minutes each, just talk a little bit about really what we want to know about for this panel is your sort of educational programs, your experiences. What are you doing today? Hint, hint, the next question is, what should we be doing tomorrow? But just to kind of, to get things started, so just tell us a little bit about what you're doing today. If you want, I'm sure this will overlap with your research, but really the focus for this panel is more about education. So I'll hand it over.
Do you want to start?
Okay.
Okay, so I guess what I can say from teaching at the University of Florida is University of Florida is one of the largest universities, I want to say, in the United States. So there were 350 students in my discrete math class. So I think one of the challenges that we have in teaching bioinformatics at the University of Florida is kind of how to reach everyone. There's going to, is it possible to teach a very large class and have 50% of the class be biology and life science students and then 50% of the class be computer science students with 350? I think that's one of the, we don't have that. I guess I maybe made a jump there, but we're not doing that at the current moment. But for some universities like the University of Florida, we might in the future have to do something like that. Right now, we just have computer bioinformatics classes, which are taught in the computer science department, and bioinformatics classes that are taught in various biology departments across campus, but there's very little interaction or between them. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been teaching at Johns Hopkins since 2012, and we're not as big as a big state school, so we don't have the exact same scaling problems, but we have our own more modest scaling problems. Since undergraduate enrollments in computer science, I think pretty much everywhere are going up, up, up. So I've been teaching genomics topics to groups of students who are mostly computational, but also some folks from places like biomedical engineering and biology and other departments. And I'd say one challenge that is maybe one of the more fun challenges to teaching that group is to try to get the computationalists to understand the same sort of thing that a lot of us maybe started to understand in grad school, which is that computationalists can really run the table, can be first-class citizens and work shoulder to shoulder with biologists and may have a really big impact. They don't know that at first, right? They kind of know that there's industry and that they can make a lot of money and they go to Google, but explaining to them that they can be, they can hit the jackpot scientifically as well is kind of news to them. And so I try to convey that. I try to tell them about computer scientists who are in this field, whose training is very traditional computer science, but then they made very serious contributions in science, and explain to them also some of the controversies that have been in the history of genomics that highlight disagreements about computation and how important those disagreements were and how important innovations came from having that argument. Yeah.
So I work at Carlow University, which is down the street past BST3, if you're familiar with Pittsburgh. We are a very small school. I only have like 20 kids in a class. There's like 1,200 undergrads or 1,200 students at Carlow. Most of my students are relatively underprepared for college, I would say. Biology is one of our biggest majors. Many of those students struggle with basic algebra. They struggle real hard in my calculus 1 class a lot of the time. And a big chunk of that, and a big part of my difficulties, is that these students are not necessarily taught in high school the importance of having some kind of actual mathematical background. They see that biology is great, they take that class in high school and they love it, but they don't understand that there is actually overlap between math and computer science and biology, and they don't necessarily have guidance counselors that can tell them about that before they come in. So, they take math in 9th grade, they don't have to take it again, and then they come into college and they say, holy crap, what am I supposed to do with this? I haven't multiplied x by x in like 5 years, I don't know what to do, and they panic. So a big part, I think, of the challenges moving forward, so I'm working predominantly with freshmen and sophomore students and trying to prepare them for the idea that being a biologist doesn't necessarily just mean that they're going to stand in a lab and pipette all day long, and that they might actually become someone who does computational work, or at least work with someone who does computational work, and then understanding the, what kind of background knowledge they would need that is not necessarily just taught in their biology departments.
Thanks very much for that introduction. So I was wondering if you could each sort of comment on kind of both the here and in the future in terms of curriculum. I guess one of the essential questions I sort of struggle with is, especially teaching computer science to biologists, what's the right strategy, tools, techniques, and how deeply do we need to go? And then conversely, how do we prepare sort of, modern computer scientists to face the analysis challenges and sort of leadership challenges in the future with respect to biological analysis? So I think these are related questions, but not exactly the same. As how do we teach the biologists? How do we teach the computer scientists? I think ultimately, I like everyone to be able to succeed. But what are some thoughts on what's sort of essential today, and what do you think will be essential, say, in the next 5 years?
Well,
You don't necessarily have to go to
I guess I can start and just touch upon what Ben said, which was, I think one of the challenges when you're teaching bioinformatics to computer science students is kind of inspiring them that computer science isn't just working for Google or like Facebook or EA. There's another side of computer science where you're looking at more important scientific problems, and I think there's not sometimes an immediate payoff. So trying to inspire, our current generation of computer science students to go into bioinformatics and go into graduate school. I think that's a fairly important aspect. I think biology and life science students, they definitely buy into the idea that they're going to have to do data analysis, but I think a lot of them are scared or worried that they're underprepared to do that. So I think that kind of opening up like informal or formal training programs for even freshman biology and life science students can be worthwhile there. Yeah, there's a lot of workshops on, learning basic bioinformatic tools, getting used to terminals and Unix environments.
Let me follow up with that. Is that a part of the required curriculum, or are those workshops kind of on the side?
I guess I'm referring to more of, we don't have anything at the University of Florida, but I do frequently I get notifications of these workshops. They're holding a workshop at Cornell, or they're holding a workshop at, University of Central Florida, wherever, where, it's a several-week class, and they're going to teach them how to align reads to a reference genome and those sort of activities.
If you're not constrained by, I don't know, money, time, or politics, is this something you'd
Yeah,
like to
I
bring
know.
to your institution? Or is it okay that these are not part of the curriculum?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we have at the University of Florida is that I don't know if we have a lot of influence on the curriculum that is not our department. Especially since if you look at large state institutions, we have microbiology, we have the medical school, we have the veterinarian school, we have the biology department, the cell molecular biology department. Like, there's at least like 10 to 15 departments I could name off. And it would be difficult for a couple of professors in computer science to influence what their curriculum is across those various departments. I think it's just scale.
Maybe moving on. Ben, do you have any kind of thoughts on, I don't know, specific languages, algorithmic techniques? It seems like machine learning is becoming really central to computational biology. We've already heard several talks, using quite successfully deep learning, for example.
Yeah.
Should this become a required part of the curriculum?
Well, I don't, the hardest kind of comments are pointing to the this or that and saying in or out. But, certainly, when we've got them so early and young, when they're still undergrads, we want to try to teach them the well springs from which the other things come. And, there's certainly stuff to get to before you get to applying machine learning, to biology. And, among them being like, what's a model? And, what are some of the what are the simple models? And what are the sacrifices that you can easily see even when you're talking just about a simple model? And, I think that, that's an approach that, in terms of what are the learning objectives of, outcomes of like a early class, for computer scientists trying to get into this area, I think it's really good to get them to think about all the things they already knew existed, like Big O, and then other things that they already knew existed, like actually profiling your program, and then giving them a instance where it's like, oh, I could have done it that way and I would have missed that, or I could have done it this way and I would have missed that. And obviously, once you get into like modeling and machine learning, there's going to be a lot of instances of that. You know, I could have used a simple model, and then this would have been easy, but I would have missed that. You know, so I think what's really rewarding and then sets them up for all kinds of more specific, complicated later classes is just really helping them see trades that they already knew existed, but maybe they didn't see it in this context or even in any applied context, and just making it really clear. Okay, well, now you have to go explore this trade-off space. You have access to all these methods. What do you do?
And then let me ask a follow-up question. Maybe could you comment a little bit about your experience in Coursera, and is that a good platform we should all be looking for, or is that complement or replace our existing classes?
Well, I mean, some great things about Coursera is that a lot of the material up there is generally free, or at least there's an option to do it for free, and then you pay to get a certificate, if optionally. And so just automatically, you are no longer, you don't get to rely on the selection bias of having like all these students come to your class who are going to be smarter than you in 10 years. It's like everybody who might be interested in this who click through a form, and then you get their feedback, right? The comments start coming at you. Like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of like putting materials up, like a YouTube video or something like that, and then checking it somewhat later. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of this perspective or that perspective or that perspective. So you get like, what's amazing about Coursera is you just get to put information that you thought of a certain way out there, and that when you teach a classroom full of people at your university, they think the same way you do. But then when you bounce it off thousands of people who are from all over the world, they see it differently, and you just sort of learn, you can sort of debug some things that you never really questioned yourself, but that when other people look at it, you can be like, oh yeah, I could see. If you never thought about it this way, then that would be confusing, right? So it's certainly helpful in that regard. I mean, I think it's great to make sure the barrier of entry is as low as possible to all these ideas, that we work on. And so Coursera is one great way to do it. YouTube is another great way to do it. There's tons of other platforms. And to me, that's been very rewarding. And it's also helpful, if you're traveling, you can sort of like assign a video that you've made, and therefore you vetted, and so it's helpful just practically speaking. But to me, the amazing thing is you just have no idea what the huge swath of people are going to say and how they're going to react, and it's usually pretty educational.
Erica, same question. Although if you wanted to comment on both sort of algorithmics and also some of the mathematics involved, I get a lot of nervous biology grad students when we talk about log-based 2. I can only imagine when you're talking
freaks
about
them out.
Differential.
I try not to even bring those two words up in most of my classes. I am actually very rudely going to excuse myself at 2:30 because I have a meeting right after this to talk to some faculty members with biology and medicine at Carlo to talk to them about bringing data analytics into their curriculum. So I was asked literally on September 1st, I think, to develop this curriculum, and I think today is the 28th, and I am now presenting it today, which is why I have like gray hair and these bags under my eyes. So I am working very hard to try to make some people who have been teaching biology the exact same way for 10, 15 years realize the importance of bringing statistics, bringing computer science, bringing math back into that curriculum, and like I said, showing these students the value of having it. I teach Calculus 1 or 2 times a semester, and as soon as I introduce what is a derivative, the next class, I show them what I do with derivatives in my research so they understand why we actually do it, because the first thing they say when I make them graph a derivative is, why do I have to do this? I don't understand, I'm a biologist. And I tell them my 2 degrees both have the word biology in them, my degrees don't have the word math in them. So actually, you're probably going to do this at some point, and here's how I use math to try to model how influenza is moving through your lungs. And they sit like this. And they're fascinated by the fact that we could do this. And since I started doing that, I have students working with me on some of these projects at my school where they originally wouldn't have even thought that they could do this kind of project. So that is something that we are trying to roll out actually in fall of 2019. So very soon, we will have a data analytics department, which is just me right now. I'm doing a bang-up job. So Yeah, so we're going to be bringing in, hopefully, courses in like teaching them what is Python, because right now they don't have any computer science. I have students who have never even used Excel before. So trying to show them that, trying to show them what is R, how do I make the right kind of graph, and then also courses in actually communicating those results to other people. So I'm trying to make them kind of the liaison between a very hard data scientist and like a business person who would have no idea what the data science is. And I want them to be able to see the interaction between those two things.
And then if I could follow up, I mean, how are you envisioning this? I mean, it sounds like, you know, if you can present these techniques in an application space, that seems to be powerful. Is that how you're going to design the curriculum, or
That's my goal. We're going to see if the people at 2:30 agree with me on that prospect. But generally, I find that with my students, if I present it to them that, okay, you need to know this, and this is why, they are far more likely, if they know upfront the why behind it, as opposed to, okay, let's sit for 2 years and take Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 and learn inverse trigonometry and see how these graphs look, and then they get mad and frustrated and bored. But if I show them up front, okay, here's what you can do with this. Here are some papers from people who come from schools like you, and they do this kind of work. I come from a school like this. I went to a school with 2,000 undergrads up in Massachusetts. So showing them that there is that potential for growth there makes them, I think, more likely to engage. Most of my students are first-generation college students, so most of them grad school isn't even on their radar. They're just, you know, happy to be where they are. So hopefully trying to broaden some of their horizons on that front.
Okay. Well, I thought what we could do now is maybe open it up to the audience here. Now we've kind of heard a little bit about your perspectives. Does anyone have any questions? You know, this could be philosophical, this could be nuts and bolts tools, or maybe just sort of comment, you know, how is it going at all of your home institutions? I'm sure there's lots of stories that could be shared.
So it's a suggestion, not a comment or anything. But I think we should distinguish two goals. One is, pedagogically speaking, what is the right way to present the material under the assumption that we'd like to do some basic computing, math, and so on, to biology students and vice versa, right? Basic biology to CS students. Number two, what should be in a typical bioinformatician's tool chest under the assumption that this person has the best motivation and mathematical and computational and biological preparation. So maybe I'd like to hear comments addressing both questions.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So what's your opinion on this to the panelists here?
It's a hard one.
It's a big question.
Okay, well, maybe you can clarify those two things to me again.
Right,
so
so
the first one is,
how do you motivate students so that this is mostly what you guys have been talking about so far, which is how to get their attention, how to deliver this, the material, so that they benefit the most out of the classes, right? What are the challenges in delivering this and so on? So this is a practical side of the education in bioinformatics. The second part is what should be in the curriculum and how do you envision the curriculum to develop in the coming few years?
And I think part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, was should it be one curriculum for students coming from a CS background versus a bio background?
In fact, it can be more.
Or more. Should there be one? If there's, what should be the topics in such a curriculum? And then, what are the topics kind of for state-of-the-art research into the future?
And do we see an undergraduate bioinformatics degree becoming the norm in the coming future? And should we prepare a draft curriculum for that?
Okay. Well, so I think so. The main questions I think are general strategies for motivation, and if there's any that any other tips, and then maybe we can have a debate about do we envision one curriculum, multiple curriculums, and what should be part of those curriculum.
so I have one comment about curriculum, and this is having been to multiple universities, as most of us have been in the room. I think it's really important that with bioinformatics, when you're teaching it to computer science is that there's a correct balance that's striked between theory and application. I've seen examples where it goes way too much in one direction and way too much in another direction, where, algorithms for the sake of algorithms, it does have its place, but, I would argue in order for it to be good bioinformatics, it should have some specific application or purpose in biology. And vice versa, bioinformatics is not all about just aligning reads to databases or blasting reads in NCBI. There's theory behind it. So I think whenever creating a bioinformatics program, there has to be that correct balance that's strike between theory and practice. And it has to happen over the course of not just a single course, but multiple courses. At UCSD, I think they do that quite well in striking this sort of balance between theory and application.
Ben, do you have any comments on motivation or curriculum?
Well, I was going to take curriculum again, and I don't know. Like on one hand, it seems like it's obvious. You totally want to tailor, the people coming in from one side and the people coming in from the other side. You want to tailor the curriculum to where they're coming from. On the other hand, when I am thinking to some textbooks that exist, especially that Pavel's written, and I'm thinking of a review paper you recently wrote, Paul, that was about if you're a biologist, one of the things you've got to think about is how do you frame a proper computational problem that's even well formed, so that you can then go to try to select an algorithm for solving that problem. So you might say, oh, well, that's for the biologist coming into the field, but those are helpful to me too. When I read those, when I think of my own training, that would have been a helpful thing for me to see, even though my training was computer science all the way up until that point. So I would have to think a lot harder, but as I think of examples of, what are the kinds of things that would be appropriate for one group, they probably are appropriate for the other group too. You don't want to assume too much about, even though all my training is in computer science, that doesn't necessarily mean I've been put through my paces when it comes to an algorithmic design from scratch type challenge, I use very much for my students, when I teach, I don't think I tailor it one way or the other. But I do try to make sure that nobody goes away without understanding what it is about their background that's valuable here. And that once you have bridged the gap a little bit, what are the things that you now can do that other people can't do?
And Eric?
I don't know if I have much more to add on top of that. I am a product of the CMU to Pitt joint PhD program in Comp Bio. And before that, I was a biomedical engineering major. So all of my background has been very interdisciplinary, kind of from the get-go. So it was sort of startling to me whenever I became a professor 3 years ago, watching students only take courses in biology or only take courses in chemistry, only in math. I couldn't get my mind around why people had been doing that for so long. So I am trying to change that slowly but surely.
Maybe I'll follow up. I mean, maybe is BME a good model for computational biology as a whole?
I was reasonably prepared for computational biology, having a biomedical engineering background, but I had never taken a course in anything like genomics. Still don't understand genomics, in all honesty. I took that class in this room. I couldn't tell you a single thing that I learned in it. But I got a B+, everybody. So. Otherwise, I do think it was a reasonably good preparation for it, because I saw a lot of computer science, I saw a lot of math, a lot of the biological applications of all of those things. But there's a few people in here who took a lot of those courses with me, and I don't think that anybody we all came from very different backgrounds, and I don't know that anybody was fully prepared for all 5 courses that you have to take for that, because it's just so interdisciplinary. You can't know everything in your 4 years of undergrad before you get there.
I guess I can also say, I guess I'm the opposite in the sense that right up until my postdoc, I would say my training was very much formally in mathematics and computer science. Even my PhD was very algorithms / theory. It wasn't until my postdoc that I decided I wanted to start getting into more applied work. And I guess that's one of the benefits of bioinformatics is that you do have kind of the opportunity to dabble in various areas. I still sit on the PC of algorithms conferences, and I still prove theorems, but I also work with biologists and work on papers that have nothing to do with any of the theorems that I proved. So I think that one of the benefits of being in a hybrid discipline is that you can go back and forth between these. And maybe it doesn't so much matter going back to Zhang's question, maybe it doesn't so much matter what the exact perfect program or training program was. Because if I look at my training, I would say it was probably very perfectly imperfect. It was I was just trained in algorithms and math formally.
But maybe I should rephrase what I said. So you're a researcher, but if you're going for an undergraduate degree in bioinformatics, we should be training students for a career in bioinformatics, just like the way we do in biomedical engineering. But I hear that biomedical engineering has the following very interesting point. They don't have many undergrad students. And in fact, apparently, the vast majority of the biomedical engineering students end up in software industry or stuff that is not related to biomedicine. So if they are the example, I think they don't really have a plan. And I don't think that they have a standard curriculum across. It has been a successful enterprise. I think there are many strong biomedical engineering departments across the nation and elsewhere. But I don't think that there is a unified curriculum the way we in computer science have.
And I would sort of argue that's maybe because I think bioinformatics in industry is still kind of working itself out, does it mean go work for Illumina or does it mean work for a pharmaceutical company?
This is what the panel should answer. I mean, I have a couple of students who are working in industry. What are other people's view on this? So that maybe there's power in numbers, right?
I think time will tell, sort of. Bioinformatics is relatively new. Right now, there's a lot of students that graduate with computer science, and they go work for some pharmaceutical company, and they're doing bioinformatics. There's biology students that graduate and go work for Illumina and do bioinformatics. I think it being such a new field, I think it's still somewhat unclear what the pathway is to industry from undergraduate. Yeah, that would be a very, I don't have any answer for that.
Do you have experience with that?
Well, maybe we could hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
We could follow up.
Exactly.
So in your varied institutions, at what point and how would you integrate sort of project-based education in bioinformatics?
Yeah.
I talked a lot.
At what point would you integrate?
Or how
Is that
would
what
you
said?
integrate project-based education? I mean, we know that it works out for a lot of kids.
So at Carlo, at least, we make students do, we call them junior project and senior project in their junior and senior year. The junior one is mostly it's predominantly learn how to read a paper, what does it mean to actually critically read something, which is a skill that I think a lot of grad students still don't have. Mm-hmm. And to understand what kind of research is actually out there. And then their senior year, their job is to go out and find a project on their own. So a lot of them just come to their faculty members. Some of them have gotten internships over the summers, and they try to continue that work, so on. I think with my students, at least, as I said, a lot of them are largely underprepared for college. So starting them on a real like project before their junior year I think would be more discouraging than anything else, because I don't think that they would have seen enough to understand how it gets together. I just had a couple students in my office earlier today, actually, they're juniors, and came in almost like tearfully, joyously happy that they are taking organic chemistry and genomics, and they were like, I understand how this stuff goes together. Like, it's linked, even though one's chemistry and one's biology. I'm like, yeah, this is my job, guys. I get it, yeah. So I think before that, it's so hard to get them to do something meaningful and to understand what they're doing.
Yeah, just to follow up, I've had students, they come in as bright-eyed freshmen. Oh, I want to cure cancer. Or
Yeah.
Oh, well, can you program? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's Hello World. And
Right.
They get so frustrated because they
Yeah.
just can't, implement these ideas they have.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, I know you, Erica. I know you have to leave.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
So
This is so rude.
So I think we should draw the panel to a close. I feel like we're just getting started, though. So, maybe at dinner tonight or during the session tomorrow. Hopefully we can have more discussions along these lines. I think we're just scratching the surface of very important topics that touches all of our lives. So let's thank the panelists. Oh, we just have one quick question.
Yeah, one quick question. So I want to know, you were talking about motivation, right?
Yeah.
How to motivate students. So jobs, of course. They know that when they graduate, there is a job for them. So I'll not talk about undergraduate with bioinformatics degree, but I would talk about the graduate students. I'm from NSF, and every year I support about 200 students to travel to various conferences. All are bioinformatics, computational biology, that kind of thing. What happens to those students? I would like to know, where are they going? Do they have jobs in academia? I don't see that many going to academia because I don't get any proposals from them. So, and if they're going to industry, what kind of industry? Where are they going? Those 200 students per year, where are they going?
Yeah, I could speak to my own students. Some have gone into academia, some have gone into postdocs, some have gone to like DNA Nexus, and some are at Facebook.
But
So
do they really do bioinformatics kind of research or what?
Yeah, I mean,
What?
And for my students, yes. Maybe we could circle back to the panel. I mean, how have your students done?
So I can say that I actually, because I had such I teach large discrete math class, I always have, right now I have like 5 undergraduate students that are working with me. And some of them, out of 5, I would say one of them goes off and decides bioinformatics is not interesting. And then out of the 4, I would say 1 goes into graduate school. 1 or 2 usually go into work for like bioinformatics. So there's a company called Archer DX, and a couple of my former students are now working for Archer DX and doing bioinformatics. And I would say what they're doing is like very traditional bioinformatics, like taking reads, aligning them to reference genomes, looking for variation, those sort of things. And then one of them, although they did research at a URA, they went and go work for some other computer science company. But I would say, like even if they don't go into computer, like I did undergraduate research assistants and like internships at things like that I didn't end up, like computer graphics. Like I thought I wanted to go into computer graphics, and I realized that would be a total disaster. So yeah, so I think they, at the very least, they learn what they're not interested in and like go in and find their path.
What I'm trying to suggest is that as a community, shouldn't you be tracking this somehow? Making sure that where are they going and that kind of thing, how many people are really.
Yeah, I mean, I keep track of my own students, but I can't speak to any other students. So that's a good point.
I understand,
That's a
but
good
that's
point.
why I'm saying,
Yeah.
as a community, you should be doing that.
I mean, also, this is a very new field. I mean, do any of you have degrees that are in bioinformatics?
No. I was going to say that'd be a great question to ask folks here, like Carl, where there are degree programs here. They probably do track, right? And I know that you guys have a job website, for example, that you hook people up with. So Carnegie Mellon would be a great model.
CMU does try to track people who graduated and where they end up. Although it's a difficult problem because there's not always a lot of motivation to report and vice versa. But we do make some attempt at it. But I think it would be true. I mean, I think the issue of jobs is the main thing that's holding us back. Particularly at CMU, where you have to make the argument you can go to computer science and be guaranteed a super high-powered job, or you can be still admitted to computer science but major in comp bio, and that's a hard sell to make, from my perspective. I mean, I think it's a good sell, but it's still it's difficult. So.
Yeah, we should follow them. Okay, let's thank the panelists again.